Welcome back to the channel, and for the first time in many years, there's a new Commodore Amiga. Kind of. We're going to take a look at this new system, as well as look at collecting for the Amiga, and why, unlike other systems, it's not so straightforward. The Amiga Mini is perhaps the newest in the line of all-in-one consoles, and for a lot of people as a solution, this is going to be the way to go, and there's quite a few reasons for this. 1989 or 1990 would probably have been the first time I saw the Commodore Amiga. My brother picked this up after a bit of an insurance payout. I think if it wasn't for that, there's no way he'd been able to afford it. This was a really capable machine at the time. As well as being a massive step up from the Sinclair ZX Spectrum, physically it was quite a big machine as well, took up a lot of desk space. And one thing Amiga owners never tend to talk about is the TV modulator. This stuck out the back of the Amiga and let you hook it up to a normal TV, but it made the Amiga about 2 foot deep on the desk. It was a really rubbish design, surely they could have done something better than this. It was the Amiga Screen Gems pack that he picked up, and in retrospect I kind of think all these games are a bit naff really. But Shadow of the Beast 2 was the first game I think I ever saw on the Commodore Amiga, and when I saw that game intro run, it was a massive step up from the Sinclair Spectrums that we were used to at the time. A fully animated introduction followed by some amazing music. But yeah, the gameplay wasn't there for this one. I also remember Back to the Future 2 being quite impressive. Again, at least in the intro, but seeing this little scene here animated when I was 9 or 10 years old, I just thought it looked amazing. Maybe not so much these days. And of course there is a game that follows, but I would say it's decidedly average, this one. I don't remember this game getting much play. In the game Nightbreed, that tried to give you a little bit more story than perhaps the other games did. I always thought this game looked quite interesting, even though we didn't really know what you had to do at the time. Driving around and going to different places and waiting for things to happen. Several years later I saw the film related to this, and it's a really great film. Check out Nightbreed, by the way. But no matter how many times we tried, we could not escape from Peliquin in the graveyard. I seem to remember this bit's a joystick waggler. Move the joystick left and right as fast as possible to try and escape him. I don't think we ever did. Maybe there's a trick to this that we don't know about. Like I say, the gameplay just wasn't there for Shadow of the Beast 2. But it just looked such an amazing game, I think we just kept going. This is also probably one of the hardest games ever made. Even if you do put the cheats on that give you infinite health, you can still lose the game. You can find yourself stuck, or maybe you mess up a puzzle and that's it. The only thing you can do is reset. Thankfully we were able to get hold of a few copied games at the time, so we weren't stuck with these few games forever. So let's take a look at a few obstacles of Amiga collecting these days. First of all, you're going to have to get yourself an Amiga, and an Amiga 500 is going to vary wildly in price. The usual price seems to be £200 and up, but you can get some a bit cheaper. The second issue you'll have is kind of cosmetic. Most Amigas will have turned to a shade of rat piss yellow over the years. This is nothing to do with being in a smoker's house, it's usually just the effect of sunlight on this type of plastic. I believe it's the bromine fire retardant chemical. You can kinda reverse this, but it does tend to weaken the plastic. The first Amiga I had myself was the Amiga 600, and this was waiting under the Christmas tree one morning. What a great Christmas that was. And for me, this is king of the Amigas. I know there's more powerful ones, but I love the design of this, nice and compact, no stupid TV modulator, and I also don't believe it suffered from the internal leaking battery issue that the Amiga 500 had, and that is starting to kill a lot of machines these days. So let's take a look at some games for the Amiga. These are a few I've got, and they're actually in pretty good condition. You've got to think some of these boxes are nearly 30 years old. But they just do not stand up to the test of time very well. Being cardboard, they tend to get damaged quite easily. You can pick up a Sega Master System game, something that was probably made 35 years ago, and you'll probably find a lot of them in perfect condition. That just doesn't seem to be the case for a lot of Amiga games. Another problem with Amiga games is the reliability of the discs. They just do not seem to hold up very well over time. In fact, you'll probably find a lot of Spectrum games that are actually more reliable. The old cassette works fine, but some of these discs just do not hold up over time. So even if you do find that one game that you really want, there's really no guarantee that it's actually going to work when you get it. Like I say, a lot of these games can be found in pretty bad condition online. But I generally find the ones with the slidable covers like the one you're seeing here tend to hold up a bit better, at least on the corners. Some of the more standard boxes that have the bottom and the top lid, they tend to fare a bit worse, definitely get a lot more damage on the corner of these ones. This copy of WizKid I've got here is actually in pretty damn good condition, which brings me on to box protectors. And that's another pain. A lot of Amiga games are in different size boxes, so trying to find exactly the right size box protector for the right size box is another pain. Lots of Amiga games also came in plastic cases, and I don't believe you can source them anymore. So you might have to put up with yellowing damaged plastic cases as well. I've got this game Theatre of Death in a box protector, and the game itself is in fantastic condition. It looks like it's just come out of the shop. I used to really love this game. Although it's kind of just a cannon fodder rip-off, I actually much preferred it. So to find one of my favourite Amiga games in fantastic condition online, I think I bought it straight away, along with a box protector. Not all games are this lucky though. Another problem is trying to buy games for the Amiga. A lot of the games you're going to end up buying off eBay, and the prices are absolutely through the roof. Here's a couple of examples of games I've found. Yep, games £100 and upwards, and there's even one at £400. Whilst I do love some of the artwork on these games, and they're very nostalgic for me, I'm just not going to pay those prices. £400 for a game that may or may not work in a cardboard box that's maybe been damaged? Nah, it's not for me. So I say, if you're nostalgic for the Amiga, buy the games you really want to own. Focus on those ones and don't worry about the others. Just get the ones that you grew up with, the ones you've got nostalgia for. Well, it's the 8th of April and my Amiga Mini arrived today, so let's take a look. I can't see any obvious differences between the retail release and the box artwork that was shown ahead of time. It still has the same games on the back and there's some real classics there. For me, it's all about Stunt Car Racer. A lot of people will have bought this console just to play that one game. I still think this product's more for sort of retro Amiga gamers. I don't think many people who wouldn't have played the Amiga would be picking this up. Maybe they're just hoping for something that goes up in value. Let's see what else we get with it. I was really impressed with the quality of the system itself. The printing on the keys is absolutely diamond sharp. And looking at this system purely aesthetically, they've done a brilliant job. It's absolutely fantastic. But no, you can't use the keyboard, it's purely there for looks. You also get some instructions. You don't need those. You can buy the joypad and mouse separately, but this comes with one of each. In the box for the mouse you get a suitably beige HDMI cable. It always seems a bit 50-50 whether you get one with these mini consoles, but it was a nice inclusion. And a good colour match too. The mouse is another great recreation of the Amiga 500 tank mouse, only this one's optical, and best of all it has micro-switched buttons. You can also plug it into your PC and use it on that if you like, but remember there's no scroll wheel, so you might get fed up with the novelty pretty quick. In the box for the controller there's a USB-C cable for powering the machine. The machine itself said it didn't actually come with a power supply, which I guess it doesn't, but it was nice to receive this cable in the box, so in theory you should be able to power it off any USB port. The controller for the machine itself is alright. I don't really like the D-pad too much and I think the shoulder button should be a bit higher, but it looks perfectly serviceable, so let's give this machine a test. On first boot of the machine you can set your display to 50 or 60 Hz if it supports it, and also select the language. You only need to do this one time. When the console boots up, you get the carousel view of all the games, and I think this is presented really well. And it's only going to be a matter of time before people hack this system and start adding their own artwork and their own games to this menu. But let's take a look at what it comes with. I think the system comes with quite a reasonable selection of games. There's pretty much something for everyone here. I know a lot of people are going to be missing things like Sensible Soccer, Shadow of the Beast and Cannon Fodder, but remember you can add your own games to this system, which is something else we'll take a look at. But let's take a look at loading one of the games in real time on the Amiga Mini. And we'll start with Stunt Car Racer, one of my favourites. This is one of the earlier games I saw for the Amiga, and it's still one of the best. But the emulation on this seems absolutely flawless. It loads right away. You have been able to emulate the Amiga for years and years, but it does require a little bit of configuration, different controllers, different models of Amiga, different memory sizes. It can be a real pain. So a little box that sits under your TV purely for games that takes all the pain out of the configuration. For a lot of people this is going to be the perfect Amiga. And yet, Stunt Car Racer is just as much fun as it always has been. Another quality of life improvement I like about this system is they've used the joypad quite well. In a lot of games that only have one joystick button, they've substituted another button on the pad for up. So in platform games you've got another choice. You can use the up on the D-pad, or you can also use a separate button. Really good solution. You are able to change a few options on the system. I would like to see a bit more in-depth configuration of the machine though. But I do like the display options, particularly the screen fit option. So for games that used odd resolutions like Turrican and Shadow of the Beast, you can set this to fit the screen, rather than display it in 2/3 of the screen or whatever it was back in the day. I was happy to see Quack on the system as well. In my opinion, this is one of Team 17's most fun games. I don't think I ever finished this one back in the day, but I remember I got really far into it. It's got great music, great simple gameplay. I think a lot of people are going to be playing this one. It's great we've got a point and click game on this system, and they've chosen Simon the Sorcerer, which in my opinion is the best point and click game of all time. You can play this game with the mouse or the joypad, whatever you prefer. Back in the day I had this on the Amiga myself, well, the Amiga CD32 console. I think it was pretty much identical, but it did have a full audio soundtrack, and I do really miss that with this game. Chris Barry from Red Dwarf voiced Simon in this game, and you do miss his sarcastic little voice, but it's still a great version of the game nonetheless with some great graphics. Project X covers the shooting side of things for the Amiga. No problems with the emulation here, it all works absolutely fine and sounds fine. I was never that big a fan of this game though, I don't know why it got so much hype. But I know a lot of people will be happy to see this on the system. If you want to see a detailed look at every single game the Amiga Mini has in depth, then there's a load of other channels that are going to be doing that. Personally, I'm more interested in the games that I can put onto this system. You can plug in a USB drive. There is a bit of software you need to be able to do that, but it is completely free, and after that you can start loading up your USB stick with games. I just chose some games at random just to see how well the emulation worked with some games that weren't stock on the system, and I think a lot of people are probably going to be using it for that. Whilst the included games are great, they're really going to be loading their own ones. You can select the USB stick as an option from the carousel menu. I did run into my first problem here. You've got to be a bit careful with the USB power supply you use. I used one that didn't have quite enough power and it was unable to power the USB stick, and it kept disconnecting. So here I used a dedicated power supply and no more problems. Games you download have got to be in the WHD load format, but they're really easy to find. You can change the settings for each game. Remember, some games seem to like the joystick in port 1 and other games in port 2. So you can set that for each game so you don't need to mess about. And you can also set the screen sizing. The first game I played was Midnight Resistance, and me and my brother used to play this back in the day, and it's a great conversion, really good game. I know the screen might look a little bit dark, but that's just how it looked back in the day. I seem to remember there was some issue with colour with this game, but that's how it looked. I did notice a small glitch with this one though. When you take out the enemies, they drop keys, and the graphics on these keys are slightly corrupted. They do give you a bit of flickering that's not present on real hardware, but it doesn't really disrupt the game. Not too bad. Maybe there's a hidden emulation option somewhere that gets rid of this issue. There is an area between level where you choose different weapons, and I did notice a little bit of slowdown here. It looks like the emulation can't quite keep up with it. Next I tried Alcatraz, and that seemed to work just fine. This is another one of those games where the screen plays in a slightly smaller size. However, thanks to the options in the emulation, we can stretch this out to the full size of the screen, without messing around with the aspect ratio. The Psygnosis game Agni has got a real iconic title theme tune, so I loaded that up just to see if I could see any difference in the sound emulation. And to my ear it sounds absolutely perfect, not a problem with this game at all.
The evil Maiden, tyrant of the highest order, lies hidden deep in his underground lair. Allied security forces demand his reign to cease. One man is needed. That man is you.
I remember seeing this game introduction back in the day and I thought it was really impressive. Even though it's just a voice, the sound of your computer speaking to you in the early 90s, a thing of wonder. Chuck Rock 2 was another game that worked without any issues. I did start having a few issues with the capture card and a little bit of audio delay, but the game itself, no problems. CJ's Elephant Antics is a great two-player little budget game. No problems with the sound and audio on this one, but the emulation's just a little bit too fast, and that makes it kinda tricky to play. Rodland is another great game on the Amiga, and this played absolutely perfectly, no issues at all. Simulacra is another great Amiga game. This looks really good, but the emulation again is a little bit too fast. This would be a lot slower on a standard Amiga 500, but I'm not sure there's any way to change the clock speed. Not that I found anyway. But you gotta think, this system's not even been out 24 hours yet. And if there's one community that likes solving problems, it's the Amiga community. There's going to be workarounds for this kind of stuff, no problems at all. Another game that worked fine for me was Turrican 2. And this is another one of those games where you might want to stretch the screen size. Another game I had an issue with was the Ninja Warriors. The main theme of this game starts out absolutely fine, but after a while sounds seem to stop playing, or the wrong ones seem to play. Again, I'm sure there'll be a workaround. Slightly Magic's another fun budget Amiga game. Again, sound and video, no problems at all. But yeah, it just runs a little bit too fast. It's really hard to select the middle item in this option menu here. And I'm sorry to say, if you're the one Amiga guy who wants to come back and play the racing game Neighbours, you're a bit out of luck. Again, it's a little bit too fast and bounces turbocharged. I didn't come across any issues trying to play Shadow of the Beast, other than my capture card playing up a little bit, but this is where the Amiga Mini joypad really comes into its own. This is a game where you used to have one single fire button, and you used to press up on the joystick for jump. But here they've mapped it to another button, and it's such a small change, but it makes a massive difference. This game's almost kinda playable. As a tricky final test, I wanted to see if this machine would run my favourite Amiga game ever, Hired Guns. This game uses keyboard control and mouse control. It can also run in a bit of an odd resolution, so this is going to be a really good test for the system. I did eventually get the game working, but I did run into some problems with this one. The sound and music seemed to be absolutely fine, but here it was kind of the controls. But this is only for a small part of the game. When you're at the character select screen, you select your characters by using the arrow keys on the keyboard and pressing return. I believe you can plug in a USB keyboard as well, but that seems like giving up. The Amiga Mini does have an on-screen keyboard to bring up those keys that you might press on occasion. You can still press the enter key just fine to select a character, but you can't use the arrow keys to move you left and right, which is going to be a bit of a problem. So here was my workaround. You can go into the options of the game and you can adjust the key mapping. This is quite useful for those games that have maybe got one or two keys on the keyboard that it would just be handy to map to the gamepad. So you can set your controls as normal, but you can also select alternative functions. So if you hold the right trigger down, you've got a whole nother selection of buttons to use. So I remapped the D-pad to keys F1 to F4 for selecting options in the menu, and the pad buttons themselves I mapped to cursor left, cursor right and return. This finally let me get into the game and I could play the game that I've always loved. So overall, what do I think? Well, I think this is a great little system. Although it's got some issues, these are all issues that can be solved. I think the design and presentation of the system are absolutely brilliant. The Amiga is much more of a tricky machine to emulate, unlike the SNES Mini and the Mega Drive Mini. It's a much wider range of hardware, different chipsets, different kickstart releases, different controllers, accelerator cards. There's a whole load of things that people have got to factor in. But I think for a buyer who just wants to play Amiga games and who doesn't want to have to deal with configuration or old school TVs or scan doublers or anything like that, I think this is the perfect solution. People are already starting to ask for a full-sized recreation, but I kinda hope they do one of the Amiga 600. It's a perfect size, nice and compact. Just give me this with USB ports on it, plenty of storage and a nice keyboard. That's me done for this time. I'm going to leave you with a selection of Amiga games and some great Amiga music.